Hello and welcome to the 5-step Perfectionist Recovery Programme. Thank you so much for purchasing this course. I'm Sarah Macaulay and I know you've made a really good decision purchasing this course, and I want to tell you that it will help you. It's going to help you overcome the anxiety that you feel as a working mum, and that you're going to have some very specific strategies to help you do that. This course, what we aim to do is help you first of all understand your perfectionist traits. And from that, pinpoint where in your life those traits are actually making your life difficult and making it more anxious and making you more anxious and making your life more stressful. I'm also going to challenge the belief that you have right now that it's good to aim for perfection. And it's not your fault that you have that belief. It's something that is pushed right across society and especially social media. But honestly, it's not helpful. It's not helping you, it's not helping your family, and it's definitely not helping your stress levels. You're also going to learn through this course new methods of thinking and behaving that are going to be kinder for you, because really you shouldn't have to push yourself so hard to have the life that you want, and you certainly shouldn't have to feel that you're making choices between your happiness and perfection. And those are also going to be kinder on all of your family and the people around you as well, which is great. And then finally, we're going to pull together a plan to make it all happen so that when you finish this course, you've got some concrete steps that you can take away to actually start making a difference on the day you start. So, starting then, my story. What is a perfectionist and how did I become one? So, a perfectionist, you probably know this, is someone who thinks that anything short of perfection is unacceptable. So it's black and white thinking. It's all or nothing, perfect or failure, boom or bust. And you might recognize some of that in yourself, or maybe you don't so much, but we'll come on to that shortly. So how did I become a perfectionist? Because it's quite useful to sort of think about what it is that impacted you in your life that made you who you are today. So for me, I was brought up on a farm. It was fantastic, it was a lot of fun, but it was really hard work and it was quite isolating as well. And because it was so much hard work, my mum, who was an only child, had quite a lot of elderly relatives, her mum and dad, uncles and aunts. And they all came and spent time with us on the farm and they all helped, which was brilliant. They were really good fun. You know, they used to tell us really great stories about what it was like living through the war and afterwards. And they were a very positive impact on our life. But for them, being a good girl, being seen and not heard, and having manners was really important. And that's what they distilled in us children. And I was the only girl in the family. So for me, being a good girl meant helping out in the house, helping my mum in particular, getting really good grades, being polite and being kind. And it's true that all of these things are important, and all of these things, they're not things that you wouldn't want for your child. However, they did also have some drawbacks, because being polite also meant never saying no, not answering back, and never shouting or arguing. And this meant that for me, being able to voice my opinion strongly or argue my point or being able to handle conflict was all very difficult. There were things that I wasn't comfortable in. I'd never learned how to handle them. And for later on in life, actually, that was quite detrimental. So I grew up in that sort of environment, and I took this perfectionist thinking to college, where I worked really hard and I got good grades. And I really, pushed myself very, very hard to do as well as I could, which again isn't a bad thing. But honestly, I don't think I enjoyed myself as much as some of my friends did, or certainly my husband did. He has, his name I think is still up on the wall on a plaque in the Union, at the university, where he won the fastest pint drinking competition. Now I'm not saying that we want that for all of our kids, but I just think that for me, again, it was another sign of not being in balance. It was like all studying, no work, all work, no play. And again, that balance isn't good for you. So when I got out of university, I got a great job, but I continued this sort of perfectionist thinking into the real world. And it meant that I had to work harder and longer than everybody else, because I just wasn't willing to accept things if they weren't perfect. And working in marketing, that was great in a way. I mean, I was rewarded for my thinking, because you want your TV ad to be completely perfect. You don't want there to be mistakes. You want everything to go like clockwork. And you want your billboards to be perfect and to be proof checked, because you don't want to have a huge billboard with errors on it. So actually, I was rewarded for those traits I had in myself, but I was getting more and more stressed. And actually, when I had my daughter, which sort of happened a few years into my career, it was wonderful. We'd had a miscarriage before I had my daughter, which meant that I was already probably quite stressed. And when she arrived, it was wonderful. We were so happy. But even from the get-go, I felt that I was failing my daughter. I had trouble breastfeeding, and I listened to a lot of the nurses who were surrounding me, who themselves were probably under a lot of pressure because, it was underfunded in the hospital. And they told me she was fine. And even though I felt and I worried that she wasn't eating enough or drinking enough and that she was dehydrated, I listened to them. I ignored that little voice in me and I listened to them. And when my obstetrician came to see the baby, my daughter, she was so angry that she'd lost so much weight that she gave them all such a row. But I took that as I am a failure as a mum. I've already failed as a mum. And so I took that pressure on myself as well. Not only did I have to be perfect at work, I now needed to be perfect for my daughter. And as you can imagine, the stress just got worse and worse because juggling working and being at home, working and being a mum at home is difficult anyway. It's difficult at the best of times. But if you're worrying about doing it perfectly, you're just giving yourself an awful lot more hurdles to cross. And when I moved into my job in oil and gas, not only was I being challenged, by being a working mum at all, but I was dealing with a lot of very strong male colleagues who were quite happy for conflict. In fact, they liked conflict. They liked to shout. They liked to argue. Some of them, I think, were probably quite a bit aggressive. And those were all things that I found very difficult to handle. And in my thinking, I thought, if I'm a perfectionist, if I'm doing things perfectly, why are they arguing with me? Why are they shouting? And so I took all of those things very stressful and took them very personally, and I was very stressed. And I started to think that the only choice for me was either working or being a stay-at-home mum. And it felt like an impossible choice because I wanted to work, but also I felt like I wasn't actually able to commit 100% to either work or family, and it's a horrible position to be in. And eventually I hit rock bottom. I sort of felt that there was no way out. I felt that, I wasn't doing well enough in either sphere in my life. And regardless, and my husband, my poor husband, was trying to understand why, I was so anxious and stressed all the time. And it got to the point where I thought, I wonder if my daughter would be okay without me. And that was a horrible point to be at. And thankfully it was a wake-up call. And I thought, no, this can't be right. This isn't what we want. So I started to do lots of classes and courses. I saw counsellors, I did training, I listened to books, I read podcasts. I became a bit obsessed, as perfectionists are wont to do. But I learned a lot. But it took a long time for me to realise that actually the way I was thinking was impacting the way I experienced the world. So I could perceive the world in one way and somebody else might perceive exactly the same thing but perceive it differently. But because of how I was thinking, that meant that my perfectionism was stopping me from being able to enjoy my life. So this key issue of perfectionism made me feel like a failure before I even started. And I'm pretty sure that that must be the same for you because so much of society is based around being perfect. You know what it's like. You look on Instagram, there are these fantastically thin women. They all look beautiful. They have completely clean houses. I should probably mention that the dog bed is down here on this side and I've got a whole pile of books on this side. You just can't see them, and paperwork and bills. So my life is not like that. I mean, it might look I've tidied up a bit so that you can see on this video, but really that's not how our lives are, and we don't all have immaculate houses and children that are super successful. My daughter has difficulties of her own that we have to deal with, and trying to present that to the world along with having a stellar career, it's a lot to live up to, and it's also not realistic. So it's easy for us to forget the amount of effort that will go into presenting that perfect life in that shot or that video. It's easy for us to forget that these people all have real lives too. And if we think that that is real, then it makes us feel that because our lives aren't like that, we are somehow less than. And that's not good. And nobody is perfect. And for you to be able to accept that you're not perfect is going to make you a lot happier. So today's lesson, the first lesson, the first thing we want to do is find out how much of a perfectionist are you. So it's in the workbook, but I want to ask you a couple of questions. So do any of these sound true for you? Are you intimidated in social situations? Do you find yourself sort of dreading going to a party or speaking to somebody new? Do you procrastinate or put off actions? And that's definitely something that I do. Do you get depressed or feel low easily? And do you have low self-esteem, or do you compare yourselves to others and feel that you are somehow wanting or lacking in some way? Or finally, do you struggle to make decisions? Now, all of these things you might not think of as being a result of being a perfectionist, but actually they are. And they're all things that we can learn to handle better and to move away from so that we can have a less stressful life. So the first step today is to go to page 7 of your workbook, and there's a quiz. Complete the quiz. Take some time for yourself, go to the bathroom. That tends to be the only place where I can actually get some peace and quiet, although actually my new cat Kevin has learned to open the door, so that may not even be somewhere that I can have some peace and quiet. But go to the bathroom, lock yourself in and take a pen and fill out the quiz. And be as honest as you possibly can be, because nobody is going to see it and nobody is going to judge you, but it's for you to really see where it is that you're being hard on yourself. And what you might find as well is that there are some areas where you are a perfectionist and some areas where you're not. For example, I found that I was quite happy to forgo doing exercise for myself as long as I looked okay. I still maintained a certain weight. So I made very bad diet choices and lifestyle choices, but just to portray the idea that, my weight was still the right weight. But nobody knew that I wasn't actually exercising. And so those sort of decisions that you're making can be, not the right decisions for yourself. What I want you to do after the quiz is tally up the scores so that we know whether we're dealing with just mild perfectionism or whether we're dealing with all out, complete, need to control everything. Everything has to be perfect. And if that is the case, don't worry, it's fine. I was sort of in that camp. I was totally in that camp. So there is a way around it, and it's fine, because obviously you've got to remember that your life as it is, it might not be perfect, but there are going to be some real high points. You have a family, you have a job, there are amazing things that you are already doing, and being a perfectionist has got you there. It's just that letting go of perfectionist will let you take the next step. So, step 2 is to look at your score and write down what you've thought. What have you learned? Is there anything there that surprises you? And how did this make you feel? And don't worry, there's no right or wrong to this either. It might make you feel sad. It might make you feel proud. You might think, oh, I like the fact that I'm a perfectionist in these areas. You might be quite surprised by some of the stuff that comes up. So it's absolutely fine. Don't beat yourself up. Just note down how you're feeling. And then third step is let's look at the answers and what do they really mean for you? What areas of your life are you really pushing yourself to be a perfectionist in? Like I said, is it okay to skip exercise as long as your hair looks nice? For me, I don't mind wearing, different or shabbier clothes to go to the supermarket, but I still want to have my makeup on, which I know sounds ridiculous, but it's something that I do. But are your expectations realistic? Do you, can you live your life happily with some of these expectations that you're setting yourself? For example, if your house has to be completely tidy all of the time and you're living with toddlers, that's going to be really difficult to achieve. And it's also probably not really worth it. So have a look and see if your expectations are realistic. As I said, this might bring up some difficult feelings for you, but don't worry. It's a sign actually that you've got things that you can work on and improve. So really don't take it too much to heart. But following this exercise, do be kind to yourself. Take a bath or read something, or if you like to read or watch Netflix or, walk the dog. Just do something nice for yourself. Be kind to yourself while this all sort of settles in your mind. And remember to use the free item that you got, the EFT, the How to Control Anxiety in One Easy Step. Use that EFT and tap, remember to tap your forehead and your eye and going over all the acupuncture points. Remember to do that to help relieve the anxiety that you're feeling and just to give yourself a bit of a break and to sort of calm your body and calm your nervous system down. So that's lesson 1, or module 1, and I really hope you get a lot from it, and I look forward to seeing you in the second module. And I know for a fact that this does work because a friend of mine actually recently took this for me. I wanted her to test this new training. And she said she was amazed by, just how many areas of her life perfectionism was pervading. I mean, it was everywhere, and it did make her think differently. So I really hope you get some learnings from this, and have a lovely evening, and I will see you in the next module.